What's going on, everybody, and welcome back into the Built Different podcast. As always, I will be your host today, Dr. Zach Clinton. I hope and pray you've had a great weekend, and I hope and pray you're having a great start to your week. That being said, today we're going to talk about worship. We're going to talk about warfare, and as we get to know one of my dearest friends a little bit better, my prayer is that you will get to know the heart of God a little bit better as well. Joining me today is, as I mentioned, become a very close personal friend of mine. He's my golf buddy. I tell you what, we're becoming scratch golfers, as in like scratching the surface
of getting progress.
Of progress, exactly. No, but this is a man who has really pushed me and challenged me in my own personal faith, leads the life group that my wife Evelyn and I get the opportunity of going to, alongside of his wife Rachel and Hope and Chris and others. But he also is a worship leader at Thomas Road Baptist Church, really heavily involved with the young adult ministry at TRBC. And as I just said, just an incredible man of God. That being said, Zach Bowsher, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you for having me, bro.
I'm really looking forward to it. This past week, we were just out at Poplar Forest. If you're from the Lynchburg, Virginia area, 5 under, Captain's Choice Tournament. So we are getting better, I will say that. But this isn't about golf. We're going to talk up front about something really cool that you have released here recently, which is a new hit single. It's become a part, I'm saying this, it has become a part regularly of my worship music that I listen to every day. I truly have been able to partake in just like the posture of worship, being close to you. Mm-hmm. Speak for a second, Zach. Yes. What was your hope and prayer that you hope that every person like myself who gets to listen to it, what do you hope we walk away with?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for having me.
Of course,
it's an
bro.
honor to be here. It reminds me of my favorite show growing up, Mike and Mike in the Morning. It's Zach and Zach, or whatever time of day you're listening to. But no, Close to You is exciting. That is a song that has been with me for a long time. I wrote it back in 2018. So it's been 7 years, but it finally came out a month ago at this point. It's been special to kind of hear stories already from it. But one of the cool things about it was kind of the story behind it and the heart of it is simple. The title is that. Yeah. It was coming after my freshman year of Liberty. I went to Liberty University. Yep. Go Flames.
Go Flames.
My roommate is a worship leader. He's in this band called Laity. He had asked me, he's like, hey, he's from San Antonio. I'm from Dallas. So I was like, hey, I want to do this tour that starts in Texas, right? And we're going to go up through Texas, going to go to Tennessee, work our way down back into Georgia, all this stuff. Yeah. He's like, I want you to open for us as a worship leader and do these songs that you're working on. And so I was like, okay, great. So I go home for summer break, and I remember I was like, I got 3 months to get these songs ready. Right. Well, 3 months go by, and I didn't have anything ready. I thought I would have them, and I was just trying all summer. I was like, nothing was sticking. So finally, we get into the end of the summer. We're down in San Antonio. We're doing some of the rehearsals for this tour. Yeah. And we're at his house. He had this rehearsal space there. And the band was rehearsing, and I didn't have to do anything because I was an opener for them. So I stepped outside on the back porch, and I remember I had my guitar. This happens a lot with me. I'll have a guitar nearby. And I'm just praying because I'm like, man, I'm worried. What am I going to do? What am I going to sing? And I just start praying to God, and it turns into a song because I had realized I was trying to be clever. And I was trying to find something profound to say as a worship writer. What's going to be a lyric that resonates with people? And God really convicted me. He was like, "What, are you going to talk to me about this?" And it's a song about him, you know what I mean? Right. And so it really is just the idea of we can try and be clever when we try and find these solutions to our problems and how does our faith journey look like? What does our walk with God look like? And God's just sitting across the table from us, wanting to have a conversation with us as our Savior, as our friend. And so it's really the album art for it, honestly, it has a picture of a silhouette walking with Jesus. Yep. And that's kind of the idea of if it's getting complicated, just bring it back to the simple thing. God, I want to be close to you. There's nothing else that I adore. There's no one else that I want to spend more time with. So that's kind of the idea of the song, yeah.
I love it, man. It is very vulnerable, right? It's a song where it's really, like you said, it's a prayer. It's the posture of your heart. Your hope and prayer is that you would be close to God. Yeah. And as people embrace that and they welcome those lyrics in, that they too would hopefully get a little bit closer, draw a little bit nearer to God as well. When I'm thinking about music here for a second. Before I ask you, like, I want to hear all about, you're not just a worship leader, you're a musician, you're a songwriter. I want to talk about songwriting and more here for a second because I have questions. I'm very interested. But I also want to ask you for a second, as it relates to releasing a song. You said you've been sitting on that since 2018, right? That song was written. That's a lot. That's several years.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think of it as like releasing a book where it's like, man, you're putting yourself out there for people to see. And sometimes that's a very vulnerable process too. As a musician, as a songwriter, when you release this song that you've been sitting on for quite some time, just what is that process like for you personally?
Well, it's different. So I was in a band in college that released music.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Four of my best friends in the world, amazing. And so even that was a little different of a time too, where those weren't like explicitly worship songs, but they were just amazing songs that like I was releasing with friends.
Yep.
And so that looked different because it is vulnerable. You're putting out art,
right?
And art is a very vulnerable thing,
right.
Of kind of exposing, like you're kind of like peeling back the curtains. But then like with worship music specifically for me, and especially for Close to You, that was a process of 7 years. There was a lot of story in there of different journeys and trials I had walked through of feeling insecure, thinking this wasn't good enough. All these questions. I'm also kind of a perfectionist in nature.
I hear you.
So I want to make sure something's just right. And if it's not perfect and thought out 10 steps ahead, then I better wait till I have it 10 steps ahead. And so I finally hit this point about a year ago where God was just like, do it. Like, I've been telling you to do it, so do it. And so I really like centered in, and one of my great friends, Ross Black, he's a guitarist in Nashville now, but he was like, let's make them happen. And so he's helped me with that one and a few other ones as well. And some of my other friends in town too, they just were very supportive in it. Yeah. And so that was kind of the process of, there's 7 years of story there. That was after my freshman year. It was right before I started serving on a ministry team at Liberty. So all kinds of stuff were different distractions and like, oh, maybe I wasn't called to this. Maybe I am called to this. I don't know. Yeah. And God, once again, towards the end was just like, make it simple. So that was kind of the idea with Close to You too. Like,
I like that.
Strategically, I studied commercial music in college, and so one of the things is like starting with a song like that's like a slower song that's I think it's like 5 minutes or something like that. Yeah, is not a good strategy typically, but it was the right one for me because it wasn't a strategy. It was just like God was like, this is one you need to start with, on a symbolic kind of nature with that. So I just trusted him.
I'm just thinking about so many times in our own personal lives, we really want things to work out exactly how we want them to, right? We are so obsessed with it being perfect. But like you said, rather than just being obedient to the purpose that God has called you to, writing that particular song for that particular season. And I want to chat about that here for a second because as a songwriter, you've written a lot of music. And I want to think about, as I've interviewed different people, we just released a conversation with Meredith Andrews recently, and she talks about kind of her processes, but everybody has a different process of how they get this music, in front of other people and how they pour their soul out onto a page and into the song. For you personally, you talked a little bit about the story of Close to You, but just like in general, maybe even some more backwater to that, what all goes into this process? Is it like wrestling through just one particular season? This is what God is teaching me right now. Or is it like typically, no, this is something that God has revealed to me over a stretch of time? What would you say goes into your process?
My process looks different almost every song, it feels like. And so it's kind of a combination of all of those things. So it could be something that's personal to me. Could be something that's like when you're writing songs for corporate worship, there could be a story going on in the church about maybe there's a funeral of somebody who's passed, or your church is going through a great time and you're seeing God's provision and faithfulness in those things and you want to thank him for that. So it's situational with it. But for me, with my process, a lot of the times is something will resonate with me, whether it's a phrase that I hear maybe a pastor preach or something from like my Bible reading, or sometimes like a melody will just come like, why is that resonating within me? Because, one of my favorite quotes is from this philosopher. It's like, music expresses that which your words cannot put, or that which your voice cannot put words to, and that which your soul cannot remain silent on. And so like sometimes a melody will be the thing that like is resonating with me. I'm like, why is that resonating with me? And a lot of times I'm in a season of struggle, it's something that's uplifting my soul. Or if it's something where I'm contemplative, it's something that like feels like gives me a space to ask questions, melodically speaking. And so it's kind of hinges on that. And so like I find the anchor point of whether it's a lyric that's resonating, a melody that's resonating, and then I have to ask myself, why is it resonating? And then I try and build a song around building, okay, once I figure out why is this phrase resonating with me? Why is the idea of close to you resonating with me? Then I try and set up for the listener or the whoever's listening to the song, singing the song, why that should matter to them. So like with Close to You, the chorus is literally, I just want to be close to you.
Yeah.
The verse that sets it up in the first one is talking, it kind of paints a picture of Christ on the cross. So it's like our heart's endeared to him, so we want to be close to him. And then that second verse is like the change in our life, years of running, turn to dancing.
I love that line.
That was one that came like 3.5 years after I wrote the song. Because I was just like, I want a different verse there. I had hit this point where I'd been living with it, leading at these camps and conferences and stuff, and I was like, I want a different one. And I was like, there it is. It just kind of came because it was like, I wanted something that would uplift me even more, like joyfully, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Zach, it's evident. I think everybody that knows you loves you because they see this posture of worship. They see this not just wisdom and knowledge, but just like the personability that you have, where you are just so kind to others. You love on people so well. You really have the heart and the mission of Thomas Road and so many other churches to love God and love people. I want to chat with you, though, just about your story, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Close to You and music writing and musician and all of these different things that God has called you to and God has gifted you in. But at the same time, I want to hear the place where you really met the person of Jesus. I know you grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. You kind of moved more of your transformative years in McKinney, Texas. Shout out McKinney. Come on.
That's right.
But I want to hear your just backstory. Who makes Zach Bowsher Zach Bowsher?
Yeah. So my backstory is my testimony, really.
Let's hear it.
So I would say, I was born in a Christian home.
Yep.
And it wasn't until college that I really realized how special that is, that I was born in a Christian home. And that is from the fact that my parents, my dad and my mom, chose in college to put their faith in Jesus. And they said, we want to build our lives on Christ. And they've done it. And so it's been special for that. And it, like in college, when I am at the same age that they made the choices to start following Jesus in a deeper way, is whenever it really started to click to me of like, they've changed it. And it was because of a choice. It wasn't an accident or like an assumed thing that I was born in a Christian home. It's because of the choices that they've made to follow Jesus. And so, I was born in a Christian home. This was actually in Phoenix. So my dad is a coach, or he was a coach.
Yep.
He still is a coach, just not of any particular team now. He coached high school football in Arizona, and then he felt called to ministry. He came on staff at a church there, and he was our sports pastor and our men's pastor.
Let's go.
And so I learned moving outside of Texas, sports pastors aren't always that common. So it's special to get to
That's
be
pretty
there.
cool.
Yeah, and it's also unique. I'm a musician. You don't usually think,
Yeah,
you came from a sports pastor's family, but here I am.
you could play some football, by the way.
I don't know
I've
about.
seen some pics.
I don't think that's very accurate. I was a B team bench rider, but I
Hey.
had the heart.
Yeah, the heart.
I just didn't have the size. It was 5 foot flat, playing 6'8" Texas high school football.
That's tough. That's
So,
real tough.
Yeah, I just played for 1 year in high school. I played growing up, but I
Yes,
finished in high school. God, that wasn't my story.
I know it.
But in kindergarten, actually, I was at the church, and I was in upward basketball. I don't know. Most people would know what that is, but it's a basketball league that's through your church. My dad ran it every year that I know of growing up. So we were in Phoenix at the time, and I remember it was an end-of-the-year ceremony where all of the families came in. There's like a celebration. It also functions as like an outreach to people who maybe aren't involved in the church there. And he was up on stage, and he was doing a gospel presentation. And so I remember vividly that was the first moment that it had clicked to me. I was about 6 years old at the time, that I was a sinner. I had a debt that I couldn't pay, and that Jesus died for my sins, and that if I put my trust in him, I'd be saved. And so that was where I put my faith in Jesus. And about 1.5 years later is when we moved to Texas, and that was a lot of where like my formative years of discipleship, learning what it looks like to follow Jesus, came from with it. And so I was in a youth group there that my youth pastor, get this, he most youth pastors, they're at a church for like 3 years.
Right.
He was there for over 30 years.
Wow.
And so he had this, Yeah, it's special. He's still in Texas. He now does some stuff with. I mean, he leads the Southern Baptist of Texas youth ministry stuff now. Because I mean, when you're there for 30 years, you're kind of a legend.
Got some credibility.
Exactly. And so he had built this amazing discipleship program, and so like getting to be there, getting to be under my parents, like my amazing pastors there, and my youth pastor was special because like just the way that they all taught how do you follow Jesus. Here's practical disciplines for it, because if you're not doing disciplines that are helping you with your heart habits, you're not going to move along in the process of it. And so that was a special time of opportunity for getting to lead worship, but more importantly, getting to be formed spiritually for how do you think of God, and then why are you doing what you're doing with it.
I love your story and your passion for Jesus. I think it really oozes out of you, and you kind of reek of the aroma of Christ, which is such a compliment that I think, a lot of people notice about Zach Bowsher. And when I think of your story, though, like you said, we were talking about the process of songwriting. We're talking about now the process of life, the process of faith, spiritual formation. It is a journey, not a destination, right? When we come to know Jesus as our personal Lord and Savior, it doesn't just stop there. Talking about the disciplines and more. We need people, though, that will surround us, that will come alongside of us, that will nurture us, that will help us mature in the faith. And I know you and I share this common interest. You've already started to talk a little bit about your dad, what he means to you. But you have a very close relationship with him. When we golf, right, we've golfed with my pops a couple of times, and you always laugh. You're like, your dad reminds me of my dad, and your relationship with your dad reminds me of my relationship with my dad. Speak to the importance of, just like your father, the impact he's had on your life, and how significant it is to have, because we're privileged with an earthly father, and the love that we received from that man helps us now better understand the heavenly Father and his love that he has for us. Speak to that if you would.
Yeah. So, absolutely. My dad is my hero. Both of my parents are amazing. Yeah. I love my mom as well.
Of course.
Specifically answering the question about dad.
Yes.
That's probably a part we get cut out. My mom's going to be watching this. Sorry. Let me read that. Yeah, so my dad is one of my heroes. Absolutely. Like, he is, like I said, he's a coach, so he's great at these disciplines. I remember, like, every morning I could wake up, and we have this, like, overlook of our house where, like, I can see him at the kitchen table, and he's got, like, just one of those, the yellow, like, legal bound, like the papers that fold over. Oh, yeah. That was his journal, and he always had his Bible right there. You can find him every single morning doing that. And that alone is an amazing thing to just get to witness, the faithfulness of that. But then also he was very intentional with all of the time that he has with us. And so every year growing up, summer would come to a close, and there would be like a theme for the year. It'd be like kindergarten, it's simple, like we tell the truth. Right. Or like, I remember he had these 3 things, like he coached football. We were the McKinney 49ers. Yep. Let's go. And like we would, the stickers that you get on the helmets a lot of times, like Ohio State. I know that's not your favorite team there. Thanks. But like those stickers, he had one that he would do that was like RRR, remember, respect, rise above. Yes. One of the themes too was like 2, 3, 4, love God first, other second, me last. So like those kinds of phrases that were like the focal points of the year would be like what he's like helping us through. And so in the year, he would remind us, he would encourage us, he would discipline us according to us, and like hold us accountable to those things. And that's transformative right there. Just that somebody will have that idea and follow through with seeing that. But it's also how he loved my mom, how he focuses on our family, and like, here's what we're going to prioritize. Like, we're going to be a family that's built on Jesus, so this is how we're going to do things like that. And so getting to watch that is amazing. And then also like with music too. So one of the things about my dad, he's a coach, he's a sports guy. Yeah. He'll tell you this. He is not musical at all. He can keep a decent rhythm, I will say that. But in terms of singing, and he'll tell you this too, he's tone deaf. So people will ask me like, oh, where did you like get your love for music from? He made me appreciate a lot. Like, he's a big U2 fan. So like, I love U2. Oh yeah. But I would say it definitely got more of the music side from my mom. However, my dad is one of the greatest worship leaders I know. And that's because every Sunday, like standing next to him in church that I get to, or like if I'm on platform, or we're just growing up, like you could just see him. He's hands raised, he's singing, and just a perfect example of like what it looks like to follow Jesus and to like love worshiping God because he sees and he knows personally life before Christ, life after Christ, and what the difference is there. And one of the phrases that stuck with me like hugely from like growing up and becoming a worship leader is he would always tell me like in high school before I had my license, he would pull up to church and like I would be either leading with our youth group or when I would start to lead like in our main service on Sunday mornings, I'd be getting out of the car and I'd be going to the back to grab my guitar or my pedal board, whatever gear I needed for the morning. And he'd be like, sing for him, not for them. And so he would say that every time I would lead worship, every time I would do like, I was in some choir stuff, like I would do competitions for that growing up, just different things where he said, God's giving you a gift, so you need to give it back to him because you're not doing it for them. And so that was probably like, that's probably the most profound thing for like worship leadership that I've picked up in terms of that. Just like sing for him, not for them. And so, yeah.
It's not a performance.
That's right.
That's what I think I have appreciated about you so much, Zach, is that when you lead people in worship, again, it's a posture, not a performance. And people notice that stuff. And I know I just am so grateful for, my dad as I hear you talk about your dad and just the representation that we were given within our homes of what biblical masculinity really is, that our power is only found through surrender, right? Sing for him, not for them. But I also want to touch on your mom here for a second.
Yeah.
Because, I think about my mama bear, and my mom, man, she was just very faithful, just a supporter, a prayer warrior, someone who was super consistent. You talked about seeing your dad and just seeing the way that he lived out his faith, but the things that he was doing behind closed doors. I can say that about my dad, but I can also say that about my mom. Yeah. Speak to your mom, but also you said you got some of your musical talent from your mom. Let's hear about that.
Yes. Okay, so my mom, she is like one of the greatest servants of all time. She is always wanting to help somebody, wanting to help us. Like I'll mention something that like maybe I'm wanting to do. She's like, well, how can I help? I'm like, I got it.
Right.
I can do it. But it's amazing because she is a helper, like 100%. She feels things for people, cares deeply for people, wants to help her family, wants to help friends. And so I think that's one of the biggest things I've gotten from my mom from that was care for people and like talk kindly about people and not don't be judgmental and don't be harsh about things. Like you want to be caring for people. So how she loves her family, both us, her like siblings from growing up, all of those things were like really the biggest ways of like she's praying each morning and she's in there. She would always be reading her Bible. She'd be sat up in her bed like reading her Bible. And so like we'd come in and interrupt, and so she'd like pray with us and like keep reading her Bible. But then always it's just like I'll call them now and like they're updating me. She's like, oh yeah, we're helping this person with this, and there's this widow at church that we were doing this for, and I'm like, that's just like she just gives of her time and her energy all the time. And so musically, so she grew up, she's from Dixon, Tennessee. Just a little west of Nashville. And so she grew up singing in the church every once in a while there. And so she always knew, like, when she has kids, she would tell us, like, you're going to start on piano. And so in kindergarten, it would have been in Arizona, she was like, I'd always fallen in love with guitar. Like, that was my thing. I was like, I want to play guitar. But she was like, you got to start with piano. I was like, okay. So in kindergarten, I picked up piano, and I appreciated it. Yeah. But I did not particularly care for piano. Right. I do now. I love piano now.
Okay, good.
But then she was like, piano lays a foundation for music knowledge, and so lived in Arizona, took a year of piano, and then we moved to Texas. Is whenever like a few years later I picked up more music stuff. But yeah, her appreciation for music and kind of understanding like music's important definitely came from like her talking about that with prioritizing learn piano as a foundation of your musical journey.
I love it. It's encouraging to hear the backstory of just your testimony when you really fell in love with Jesus and how he has become the center and the foundation on which you've built your life, while at the same time understanding the relationship you have with your dad and your mom, and I know your siblings too, but being able to recognize that, hey, it's that nucleus that has really helped propel you into the person. and the leader that you are today.
Yeah.
And I think from them, they gave you a beautiful picture. You even mentioned like your dad being one of the greatest worship leaders, even if he's tone deaf, right? That he has no pitch, but being able to be there with his hands up and just worshiping God. And they gave you an understanding of what worship was, but then you also probably have learned through experience. You being at Liberty, leading convocation, leading tens of thousands of students on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Leading thousands at Thomas Hurd Baptist Church on a Sunday, from retreats, boot camps. Come on now. Shout out Ignite Men's Boot Camp.
November 7th to the 9th.
Boot camp, camps for kids, whatever it is. I know that you always like bring that same posture because, again, it's not about performance. So I would love to hear just over your experience, the foundation that was set for you and displayed for you. What have you really found worship to really be all about, Zach?
What worship to be all about? Well, I mean, the obvious one, and like, it's just ascribing worth to God. And so at some of these camps, I get to like teach worship breakouts to like middle school and high school students. Yeah. And that's kind of like where I start, because that's the verbatim definition is ascribing worth to something is worship. But then you really get to break down like what does it mean to ascribe worth? Yes, it's to sing and it's to say these lyrics, but it's more about your heart. And it is saying that God's worth, if I can't sing, God's worth maybe making a fool of myself because he instructs me to worship him through song. And so I'm offering my idea of what people think I should be and what people think of me. That's my offering of worship in that moment. Yeah. It is laying my life, my preferences, my wants down at the altar. Yeah. Because God is worth laying those things down, because worship should come at a sacrifice. And in today's world, worship comes sometimes at a sacrifice, especially as worship leaders too. It's one of those things that I can really struggle to wrestle with. It's like you can release a song on Spotify and you can get money from it. It's like, how are you, it's like one of those things like, how am I sacrificing through that? But it's kind of the ideas of I'm laying my life, my wants down for God to use them and to do what he will with those. And so you kind of touched on like the context and that kind of a thing. And what's really cool is I've gotten to lead at a lot of different places with a lot of different age groups, a lot of different cultures across the world and stuff. And it's all pretty similar. Yeah. Everybody needs a relationship with God. Yes. Everybody needs to feel what it's like to worship with people around you. I share stories. One story in particular that was really cool, because corporate worship specifically, outside of just independent, on your own, at home worship, which is equally important, and your whole life is worship. But that's a whole different. That's a whole different podcast.
No, I hear you.
But corporate worship has a distinct ability where the saints are able to encourage one another, where you're able to look across the aisle from somebody who you know is going through something, and you can still see them worshiping. I remember there was one story, this was 2 years ago. One of my best friends, his name's Carter Bowen. He drums with me and he plays keys with me all the time. I was using this illustration at one of those electives that I was telling you about, where I was teaching some students about this, and I was saying one powerful thing about worship is you could be walking through something. And I had just recently at the time, this would have been 2 years ago, I had just recently lost my Nana, so my mom's mom. And I was using that kind of as an example, and I cannot remember which song. Oh, because death is just the door. Christ be magnified. I was using the example of Christ be magnified. The bridge of it says, the death is just the doorway into resurrection life. If I join you in your suffering, I will join you when you rise. And I was saying that, I was like, if I believe and I know that my Nana specifically was saved and she's there, then I can take comfort and not grieve as the world grieves in that loss. Right. And I was saying that, and I said, so if Carter over here knows that I just walked through that, and he's seeing me sing that, and he's going through that as well, that's something that encourages him. Like, I know he's a little further along in the journey for this, and yet he still knows this to be true. Yeah. So I can continue. That's another reason to trust God. It's another testimony, like in court almost, of like, this is true of God. You know, I can testify to that. And so I use this example, and in my head, it was completely it was just a fake example. Like, it was real. My part of it was real, but the Carter thing was not. And so he comes up to me afterwards. He's like, how did you know? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, I guess his grandmother had just passed, like, within the last couple of days. And it wasn't like, it sounds bad that I didn't know that about my friend. He just hadn't shared it because I think it was just very fresh.
So personal, yeah.
You know, it's very personal. And I was like, dude, I didn't know that.
Wow.
And so he, like, that was something he walked through, and he was talking about, literally, like, the example that I was talking about was what was resonating with him in that moment. Because it had been within, I think it was within a 2 or 3 month period of time that both of that had occurred for the two of us. And so, like, that kind of thing where the room is filled with testimonies of, I can testify that God is a provider, that he is a faithful friend, that he's a man of sorrows, he comforts us in grief.
Worship is a weapon,
Yeah.
right, in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And I think, like you just said, it's being able to recognize that we don't grieve as the world grieves,
Yeah.
but it's this idea that death has no sting because even though we might grieve, right, the fellowship on this side of eternity, we have the hope because of heaven, because of what Jesus has already done on our behalf, and that substitutionary death on a cross and rising again so that we would have the opportunity of spending eternal life. There is beauty in resting in that assurance every single day. But then I think worship, in my mind, Zach, because I do want to touch on something that you said where you're like, we could have a whole nother conversation about this, but worship to me is like it's practicing that of remembrance. Like I think of the Psalms. I think of David, who was walking through horrific times, right? He was on the run, probably doubting, probably terrified, anxious, depressed, whatever it was, but yet he clung to worship.
Yeah.
Singing in song, hymns of praise to God, to say, God, you know what? This is what my circumstances look like, but I'm going to rest in your character. This is who I know you to be, because you are the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. But you talked about our life is all a posture of worship. It's how we, in a sense, choose, like you said, to ascribe worth to something, to give worth to God through our actions, through our occupations, through the way that we treat our wives, our kids one day, whatever it is. Speak to just worship at large, being a part of everything that we do in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it is worship, it comes at a cost. And the cost is your preferences and your wants, you know, because in our own sinful nature, our preferences equates to our wants. What's convenient, what's easy for us. And so it's about then prioritizing, the Psalm says that you would give me the desires of my heart. That's not saying my desires of my heart. I think of it as the desires you want for me to want. Is what I want to have. I was just praying that the other day of like, God, I want your desires that are in me, essentially. And so that is exactly what you're saying of when you wake up in the morning, how are you spending your time? How are you spending your energy? Are you being sacrificial to the people around you? You said how you're treating your wife. How are you treating people? What does your day look like? You know, our life group just went through the practicing the way.
Exactly.
And it's literally like, how are you building your agenda, if you will, around the architecture of how a life devoted to Christ looks? Like, are you giving of your time, your energy, your money towards the things of God? Where it's saying, essentially, you say ascribing worth. It should cost you something. And it's like putting your life where your mouth is with it, of saying like, I can show you these things that I'm like in response. And it's not a thing of, oh, God needs this from me, but it's a response of God has done this, so my response is this. And the Holy Spirit is what enables us to live those things out, because he's the helper. Because if it's just down to you and I, and we're wanting this stuff, like, I'm going to be on the golf course most of the day, you know?
Right. I hear that.
Because I want to go do that. But it's like, God's like, no, I've given you a gift. I've given you a voice. I've given you a platform to say things on and to lead people on. So I need you to be found faithful in the little moments before you're found faithful on those other moments.
I remember years ago there was a pastor named Jedediah Thurner, and he was out of that One Day LA campaign where they brought in like Justin Bieber in this big free concert, and so many people were professing Christ and whatnot. But he told me in an interview, he said, Zach, the drugs of choice in culture and society, pretty simple: comfort and convenience. He went on to say, think about it. We like our food fast. We like our men and women easy. We like success overnight. We like cheat sheets instead of study guides. We want to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. We like welfare instead of jobs. We ultimately want God's destiny at a discount. And he went on to say this, but Zach, we have to remember that anything worth value in this life comes at a cost. That's what you're saying. Worship comes with a price tag, right? We have to be able to get out of the way so that God can have his way in and through our lives, in and through the crevices that we're trying to hide, behind closed doors and more. Right. Are we worshiping holistically in every facet and dimension of life? I want to talk about corporate worship now for a second, because you lead worship at Thomas Road. Yeah. I'm back row Baptist, I'll be honest with you, but I'm always so excited to see you up there, and I'm always trying to just make eye contact with you or something, but you are just so gifted in leading worship. But you talked about how you don't want it to be a performance. Mm-hmm. It's really about like presence, like you being in the presence of God, you worshiping God, you proclaiming these truths. Yeah. No matter the season you might be going through, we just get the opportunity of partaking alongside of you in worship. Hopefully it's very individualized to us too. Mm-hmm. But speak to the battle that some people as worship leaders, as musicians, as artists struggle with, where it's probably difficult when the lights are bright and the cameras are on you and you're the one leading. How do you prepare yourself to, again, get out of the way so God can have his way?
I would say the biggest thing is what is done in secret is then exposed in the light, obviously in many ways, but especially like in the secret place. I was just in January of this past year, not this past year. We had Leland Mooring come out for leading with some of our young adults. And one of the things that was really cool is my wife, Rachel, and I, we got to sit down with him at lunch, and like we went to coffee with them and just like getting to hear his heart behind things and talking with him. And what I kept noticing him saying was a secret history with Jesus. He kept referring it to that. And you could just tell it just came from this deep place of relationship with him, of his secret history with Jesus, that then comes out into a love and an admiration of Jesus in every walk, and like in his conversation, then later on that night in how he was leading and how he was praying through things and how he was talking in between songs about what Jesus has done, who he is, and like what their relationship and what the secret history of Jesus has impacted his life with. And so I would say that's kind of like the biggest thing of preparation. It's like you've got to be ready. It's Absolutely. Like anybody in faith, you're commanded, like, be ready to give an explanation for the hope that you have. It's the same thing with leading worship. But you have to protect of the idea of, like, it's not me. I was given a gift, and I'm going to give it back to God. And, you have to make sure you're singing for him and not for them for it. And so if that is the case, and I'm singing for him, I want people to be looking at him. So that goes into, what are you wearing? How are you handling yourself on stage? What are you saying in between songs? What songs are you singing too? Yep. That's a big one too. Like, is it singable? If it's a corporate worship song, like, can other people sing with you? Are you too high in the rafters? Are you being too distracting with songs? And so my personal conviction is to let the song speak for itself a lot of the time. Yes. Like, you can do some vocal things and some musical things to help draw attention to those truths and to give and facilitate an opportunity for people to worship and see the value in what you're singing as well. But yeah, that's one of the big things is I try, one of the things, I cannot remember where I heard this from, but I definitely heard it from somebody growing up. And it stuck with me ever since then, like at least since like sophomore year of high school. I find a line on a stage whenever I'm walking onto a stage, and I leave, when I'm crossing that line in my head, I'm leaving my wants and what I want people to think of me behind the line. I do not do that perfectly. I would even say, I would say most of the time. I don't know that I'm doing that perfectly most of the time. But that little thing helps me check what my priorities are when I get there, because I'm like, I want to lead according to like what God has for this moment for it.
It's powerful, dude. A secret history with Jesus. Being in the sports psychology field, there's a book by a guy named Joshua Medcalf that's called Winning in the Dark. And he always talks about how everybody wants to shine under the bright lights. Yeah. But in reality, the bright lights only reveal your work in the dark. I just am a firm believer that your preparation in times of peace is the greatest predictor of your behavior in times of war. I was reading out of Job the other day, and I think so many people, when they hear of Job's life, who really went through spiritual warfare, who lost everything, literally everything, It was stripped from him. It was taken from him. It was like, man, that's an unfair life.
Yeah.
But yet he's able to proclaim, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
There's a verse early on in Job 1:5. It leads up talking about all the things that Job did. All like he would pray over his life, he'd pray over his future, he'd pray over each of his children each and every day.
Yeah.
So even when those things were taken from him, there's a verse in Job chapter 1 verse 5, and it's 4 words. Thus Job did regularly. He did those things every single day with consistency, in the dark, when nobody was watching. It was that secret history with Jesus. So then he was able to rely on that. That was second nature. That was his weapon of choice when it came to warfare, was worship. Zach, you mentioned your wife, Rachel, and she is a special person.
Mm-hmm.
Evelyn has really just loved diving deep into a relationship with her, and I'm so grateful that we came across you guys on an Alaskan cruise.
That's right.
For AACC, the renewal cruise. I think that's what the theme was. But anyways, I'm so grateful that we've been able to dive into just friendship with you guys. But speak to the importance of Rachel and what she's meant to you, and how cool and unique it is that you guys get to lead worship corporately, but also privately. And you get to lead her spiritually.
Yeah.
But speak to the process you've gotten to do together.
Yes. Well, she's my best friend.
Yeah.
And she is amazing. It's crazy. I remember growing up, I was always say like my mom would kind of ask me like, well, do you want your future wife? Like, do you think you want her to like music and stuff? And I said, well, I really love music. And so I'm like, and I want her to think, I want her to join with me in some form, whether it's just encouragement or in music. And so I was like, I don't know. And then I met Rachel. I was like, yeah, I want her to be in music.
Yeah.
Like whatever. So yeah, that'd be great.
She's got to be.
She's got to be. And so it's been special because music is something that's dear to me and it's very dear to her. And she comes about it at a completely different way. And it really helps me think of things as well. Specifically with music, but like getting to lead worship together is amazing too, because worship is something I think you should have really strong convictions on in the sense of how you live it out. I don't think it's something you should like take lightheartedly, and she takes it very seriously, protecting like her thoughts on how she thinks of worship and how she approaches leading worship. And so we both get to like really iron sharpens iron.
That's
So
right.
we both get to like sharpen each other in terms of like, well, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Or like keep doing it like this. And so it's been really special to get to do that because I mean she's consistent. Like that's one of the words I would say. She's consistent vocally, yes, because her voice is amazing. But like she's consistent with like how like her convictions on worship and how she wants to carry herself on platform, but more importantly, off of the platform with how she treats people and is putting others before herself with it and like just deeply caring. Like she feels things very strongly, and so she is a very empathetic person. And so like when she sits down with somebody, she's gonna like listen to them. She's got this great ability to just sit there and be like, now why about this? And I'll just like if it's something where like it's me and her and 2 other people and she's doing that, I'll just be sitting back like, because she's just a great listener and like approaches things completely differently than me.
Yeah.
And so it's special. And so same with worship. She is very strongly convicted on like being a non-distraction to people and wanting to facilitate those same kind of things I was just telling you about. And so we met in college. I don't know if you asked for this, but I'll give you a little bit.
I want to hear.
rundown.
And also, I kind of want to hear, didn't you meet like Worship Collective and those things were all kind of attached a little bit?
Yes. Yeah. So that was, so she was a year behind me in school. She grew up here. She was an LCA Bulldog. Grew up in Lynchburg.
Come on.
But we met my sophomore year, her freshman year, was both of our first year on the Liberty Worship Collective.
Yes.
Which, if you don't know what that is, if you're listening, that's the team that leads worship on campus for convocation, and they get to travel and do just different things.
Yeah.
And I remember we met in training week, and honestly, training week is one of those times, especially like for your first training week, you're sat down with like 60 songs, and you're going nonstop the whole week.
Yeah.
So I met her then, and we both say the same thing. Like we just don't like it was. You didn't have time to be noticing,
Right.
like, oh, that's probably my wife right there. And like, you did not have that chance.
I'm just trying to get by.
Yeah. So you're just sitting there like learning these songs. You're like, oh my gosh, and like 20 or so of them you don't end up playing, but You're learning them for that week.
That's right.
And so it's a really cool and it's a fun time, but it's a crazy time. And so the first like 5 months of school, freshman year for her, we didn't really know each other very much. So she had different friends. She grew up here. And then it wasn't until the spring semester is really when the collective travels a lot.
Yeah.
And so for whatever reason, I remember we would be on the road and they were just like, you get paired with people. And like when you're when you travel with people, you'll learn about them really fast.
Oh, yeah.
You get to see a lot. And you're like,
I'm sure you do.
Like, come to appreciate things or come to have to
Let's
pray
just say
within your heart.
strongly noticing.
Yes. you notice a lot about stuff. And we were just paired on similar trips a lot of times together, unintentionally. Nobody was scheming.
Yeah.
God had a plan. Amen. God had a plan.
Amen.
And we were just on the same trips often. And I remember I would just like notice her. And I was like, there's just something different about her. Like she's just calm, she's quiet, but she's like powerful as a worship leader. Because she's not the most outspoken person at the beginning.
Yeah, but there's a quiet confidence.
Yes. She's very confident. And so I remember I just started to notice. And they always tell you you want to meet your wife, you want to meet your spouse, running after God together. Yep. And so that was what we were doing. Like we were in these different cities. I remember we were in Murfreesboro, and she tells me this too. Like Murfreesboro is like really one of the trips that like we're leading on platform. And I remember just kind of like looking over and like in the vans when we're all riding together, I would just be like, And that was kind of the same time frame from her. Yeah. And so there's this whole process of over the next 8 months of just kind of like, how dating goes.
Yeah.
Like,
figuring things out.
What are we doing? And so finally in 2020 is when we started dating. And I remember I told her, I was like, look, I want to do this correctly. Like if we're going to be on the same worship team together, like I want to, when we're on a platform and when we're on these trips, like we're not there because we're dating, we're there because we're serving. And that was really how we approached stuff. And so we knew pretty early on in our dating that like this is something that like very much will most likely work out. And it did. And so it's been amazing to like get to lead alongside her because like with writing too. Yeah. Worship leading and writing, she's so caring and empathetic. Yeah. And I am caring and empathetic, but I would say I feel stronger on like conviction sometimes, and I can be very much, this is the truth, this is where we want to lead from, and that's good. Like leading with boldness is a good thing, but she really helps soften some of those things of like, let's pair them together really well. And so like with writing, one of the things that's really cool about her, it took us some time to like learn how to co-write together. Yeah. But one of the things that I love about how she writes, she's a lyricist. Like she has all these papers from growing up that her mom kept of like stories on the back and like songs. So it'd be like math homework from LCA. And on the back is like 2 songs. Wow. And so I cannot sit down and write lyrics. Like I can, but it's very rare. Like that's not how I get inspired. I have to like hear the music and like have this stuff that's like thought out. But we'll be in a co-write and I'll be working on piano, and like let's say there's 2 other people in the room, there's like 4 of us total. The 3 of us will be talking, and then like 10 or 15 minutes will go by and I'll realize like I haven't heard Rachel say anything. And so now I've just learned to turn to her and be like, all right, share the verses. That's right. And she'll have like 4 options of verses like written. Wow. And because she just thinks about lyrics and stuff. So that's great because verses are the hardest thing to write to, in my opinion. I bet. But it's just funny, like the pairing, and like it's amazing that God's like provided that for just like in every aspect, like the teamwork orientation of it has been really cool. I know you guys are great complements of one another. Like you said, sometimes I think people try to dive into relationship to find a completion rather than like a compliment. And you guys are both recklessly pursuing God. You mentioned the worship collective here for a moment. I just sidetrack. Just like speak to there might be some students out there who love music. They're interested. I remember actually referring a couple of people over to Rachel, and Rachel met up with them and talked to them a little bit about the collective, like what that process looks like, but also just how maybe transformative the collective was in your life and your journey and the trajectory of your musical career. Yeah. So kind of before the collective, I had just like fallen in love with music in high school. Right. Was one of those things where I just was listening to music all the time. Junior, senior year. So you asked about advice for that. Yeah. Fall in love with music. I like that. Like don't stop yourself from that. And like that kind of is sometimes a test too of like how much maybe you are or are not called to something too. I remember my junior and senior year going into those in high school, I just fell in love with it. Like God had already been telling me for years, and I just was not owning it though. Like people would ask me like, what do you feel called to in life? And I'd be like, oh, something with music. But I knew, and I just wasn't ready to own it. But like going into junior years, like when I started saying like, I know I want to write songs for the church, and I know I want to lead worship for the church, for different things like that. And so like you have to start, like you can't walk into your calling unless you can start owning your calling and saying like, this is what I believe that I'm called to, you know? And so I would say like fall in love with it and like
that.
practice.
Oh yeah.
So that you can be ready in the moments. Like I remember junior, senior of high school, that's like when a lot of people are playing Xbox and stuff. That's when I was like, I need to get rid of it because I would just be in my room for hours playing electric guitar and like
you were
playing
investing.
piano. Yes.
That's it.
And my parents would literally be like, come down here. Like I was playing video games. And then they would also be like, well, I don't know if I want to stop him. Like, he's doing something that is like good. And so I would like always be showing them like, listen to this. And I was like these ideas or like trying to recreate sounds and stuff. And so where I grew up was I grew up at First Baptist McKinney. Awesome worship ministry there. And coming to Liberty was a very different style in certain regards. But it really grew me. So my freshman year, I was at a church here that like really gave me a lot of opportunity to like learn more of like some new technology stuff with worship at the time, like with like to not get too into music and stuff, but like click tracks and different like production elements of how do you help facilitate things more distraction free with that kind of stuff. To where that really prepared me super strongly for what would come with the worship collective, because the worship collective, you're on and you're running at 1,000,000 miles an hour a lot of the time. And even then it's different than now. Like when I first started, we had 3 convocations a week. Now it's 2 convocations a week, which isn't much of a change, but it does matter.
I bet it
and
does.
so you just have to learn, like when you're on a stage, like in front of a lot of people, it's not the time to be like learning something, you know? And so being prepared beforehand helps you in the moment, because it is something. Like, I mean, with leading worship, it doesn't matter what the crowd size is. You need to be prepared, you know, because I've seen God move just as strongly in a room of 15 people as he has in a room of 15,000 people.
Yes.
And so, like, size of the congregation shouldn't matter. And if it does matter, that's something maybe you like to check on, too, of like, oh, if I was leading here, then I know I could lead like this, you know? It's like, no, it's like, if what's the most important thing is what you're singing and how you're leading people, then it doesn't matter who's in the room. Granted, you lead worship differently in different rooms sometimes. Like, you're not going to have the same ability to look somebody in the eye who's in a little circle like this as you would in a room like the Vine Center at Liberty. But I think that is one of the biggest things that the collective helped me with, was learning how to lead in different capacities. Because we'd be at convocation, and then we would go and we'd be at a camp of 60 students.
Right.
Or we'd be at convocation, and then we'd go to Columbia and lead for this soccer arena. That was crazy. And it was just really, like, you never exactly knew what you were going to get until the day before.
Yes.
And it just grows you to, like, learn how to do that. And, like, there'd be times, like, we'd be leading worship for something, and you could just sense the room, and you're like, the next song that is the next song currently does not need to be the next song.
Right.
So there'd be times that you're adapting on the fly, and, like, that just grows you a lot to be able to do that. And it also tests how have you been preparing.
Exactly.
You know?
The separation is in the preparation. That's a
Yes.
lesson that my dad always taught me growing up. Just keep on showing up, keep on preparing, because, again, your preparation in times of peace, right? When you're in high school, junior, senior year, you were investing in yourself, you were investing in your future, you were investing in the talents and the giftings that you felt called to, right? Your preparation in times of peace is the greatest predictor of your behavior in times of war. When the stress is on, when there's a lot of duress, when there's trials and there's pressure, it's like, hey, again, it's what are you doing in the dark? I want to touch on, because I know you have a love for young adults. And we talked about Rachel. There's a lot of transition that happens in kind of young adulthood. There's, you know, marriage oftentimes. Sometimes there's children involved, right? There's just so many different things. And I would love for you just to share to a young adult out there who might be listening today, just talk about the significance that marriage has actually had on your own personal life, maybe even on your own faith journey or spiritual formation, how it's helped you understand God a little bit deeper and his love for us as his bride, the church. Just speak to, again, marriage, but also transition.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was literally talking to JB, who I think is on this podcast every once in a while.
Yes, he is.
More than
yes,
that.
he is.
He was talking about like the what now stage.
Yeah.
And that I was like, that's the perfect phrase for it.
Great way of putting it.
Because you graduate college or you finish high school or whatever it looks like to start your young professional career.
Yes.
And you're like, what am I going to do now? And I mean, I say that and I'm right in the middle of it. I'm 26 right now. So I understand that feeling both experientially and just knowledge, like firsthand with it. And I would say understanding like God's going to be faithful to provide in each season of it. But like specifically with marriage, with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Rachel and I got married 3 months after she graduated. So I had a year after I graduated college before I got married, and she had like 3 months. But marriage in faith journey, like it's a very exposing process, I would say too, because you've got what we were talking about, somebody who is running next to you, sharpening you in ways that nobody else can because they're with you all the time. Especially for Rachel and I, we both work at Thomas Road, so we're with each other often. And so scripturally, the husband should lay down his life for his wife, and that is a difficult thing to do. And so it's a convicting thing to do because like you can very much sense if you're trying to take account of what and how you're living, you can tell when, and like your wife will also tell you when you're not living as Christ has. And so it's a very amazing thing to get to do that when you're paired with somebody who is a follower of Christ, who can speak in love and saying like, when you're doing this, how you're talking to these other people, like, I don't know that I would talk to them like that, or I don't know if I would have said it like that. Or like, even like, I've noticed you're spending your time doing this a little bit more lately. Yeah. And that doesn't seem like you. Like those kinds of things where you're able to have somebody speaking in has been a huge blessing. Even at sometimes when it doesn't feel like a blessing, you're like, man, I just want to do my own thing. Yes. But that's not what we're called to. That's kind of what I was just saying with offering our time to God earlier too, as well, where it's the idea of how we're living and putting our time and our energy and building our life around how God has instructed us to.
I often think about just, Evelyn, my wife, and what marriage has taught me. I often tell people that I'm doing premarital counseling with or I'm just walking alongside of, marriage does not fix things. Yeah. It typically exposes or exploits them. And I think one thing it taught me was just like the selfishness of my life, right? Where it's like I was just doing things on my time and whatnot. But although it exposed selfishness, it's taught me a lot about sacrifice and service, right? As a husband, what God has called us to as men, as husbands, as leaders of our home, but at the same time, what God does for us each and every day. It's a humbling process. It's a humbling experience, but it is such a gift. I also want to talk about this for just a moment with young adults. Justin Whitmore Early, we had on the podcast a little while ago, and he has a book called Made for People. And in that book, he describes loneliness as something very fascinating. Because I do think, like we said, the what now season of life, young adulthood, when you get married, when you have kids, typically he says that friendship is the first thing to go, but it's also the first thing you need. And how he described loneliness is someone who used to have friends. When I think about a lot of young adults, right? It's convenient. Friendship is always there. It's always happening in high school, even in college, in dorms and whatnot. Like you're surrounded by your best buds. But then when you turn into young adulthood, you graduate, and you're in that what now season, oftentimes people begin to move away, right? I've stayed here in Lynchburg my whole life, so I've seen friends come and go. But there's a need for community. Speak to just what you guys have going on a little bit at TRYA with young adults, but life groups. What has community meant to you in this what now season of life?
Yeah, well, I mean, community at its basic thing is you're not alone. Right. I mean, from the beginning where God says it's not good for man to be alone. Obviously, he's talking about wives at that situation. But, I mean, it applies in community, too.
Absolutely.
You look at early examples of Scripture in the church with how people are functioning. It's better to be together with people, to stand up and be different from the world. And you're encouraging one another, whether it's through the stories like I was sharing earlier with Carter, like going through certain things. Community. You are co-laborers is kind of what it is. And so when you're working together on something, you need to have somebody around to help encourage you, to keep pushing you on.
Yes.
And so there's so many of those practical scriptural examples, but community at its like basis form is you're with people who are like-minded, or not like-minded even too, who are helping you move forward with your faith journey of like being able to expose light in those situations. So like marriage is a form of community, as well as being in a life group is a form of community where people are able to speak into you, encourage you, help hold you accountable for things like that. And so with young adults right now, exactly what you mentioned, like in Lynchburg, you graduate college, people move away.
Oh yeah.
I mean, every year it's something like every year I'm losing 2 or 3 friends to moving, and you're like,
right. You're always helping a U-Haul pack up or unpack.
Your back is never fully recovered from going through your 20s. But especially in Lynchburg specifically, we started to notice more people are staying. Yeah. And like the national average, I cannot remember the exact one, but like when people are getting married is later now. And so that's something that is, there's a gap. There's almost a new need to be met in that situation. And so what we're doing specifically at Thomas Road with 20s and 30s is kind of like what a lot of other people that we've seen are doing too, of just having a resource for people. We're going to build a 20s and 30s community, but it's for the purpose of getting them fully integrated into serving at a local church. And specifically our local church, if you're at Thomas Road. Because what we want them to do is a life of worship should come at a cost, and your life is worship. So how are you serving the church? The best way to stay somewhere is to start serving at that place, where you just see the fruit of what it looks like to be found faithful in a place, and you're giving of your time, so you're invested personally in that place. So we're trying to get a group of 20s and 30s who are encouraging one another. They're in life groups together, but they're in the full-on church, and they're serving in kids ministry. They're serving in youth ministry. They're greeting at the door. They're invested in other opportunities at the church, because like you're doing the what now question. It's like you are the now. Like you are the thing that's going to change. Because imagine if you get involved at 25 and you're faithful at a place for 30 years. Like you can change the tide of a place with that, because you are getting invested in those places, and you're changing the dynamics of those things. So that's kind of what we're doing. We want to get them in community, but a community that pushes them towards like biblical truth, which is if you're not serving at a place and you're not invested in the church, you need to be.
I think one thing I've learned throughout my mental health journey is the antidote to trauma, and I'll throw this in here for the sake of this conversation, and I would say the best way to do transition is together. It's doing it together with people that will come alongside of you, people that will love you, people that will sharpen you, people that will support you every step of the way. Not long ago, I remember a quote by a theologian that said that we in the Western church are about 3,000 Bible verses overweight. What he meant by that is we often, our talk doesn't always align with our walk. So, hey, we place an emphasis on what Jesus said, of course. We memorize these things. We can recite these things and more, but oftentimes we don't place enough of an emphasis on how Jesus lived. What you guys are doing at TRYA, that's why Evelyn and I are so grateful to be a part and just to serve in any capacity that you guys present to us. And I love sitting under just Stephen's teaching. I love being led by you and facilitating life group, you and your wife Rachel, and again, Hope and Chris, and what you guys have meant to us. You have sharpened me, and I'm so grateful for community in and of that. I want to close this way. I always close on the podcast by leaving our guests with an opportunity to share just something pressing that God has laid on their heart for such a time as this. So to the person out there, Zach, who may be struggling, maybe feels lonely, maybe feels discouraged, maybe feels disconnected, maybe feels like they have this dream that they're a little bit afraid to pursue or to prepare for. They don't know if their dreams are going to become a reality. What's a final word of hope, encouragement, and motivation you'd leave with that person today?
God, I say this a lot whenever I go to places like those things I was telling you about. And because I found it true in my life, and I've seen story after story of this being the case, God will take the moment of your life where you think you're the most broken, you're the most hopeless, maybe you've messed up and this is the worst you've ever been, or maybe it's you think, God gave me this dream, I don't know if this is supposed to be happening anymore, and you're doubting those things. God takes that lowest moment of your life, and that's what he uses then when you're putting your faith in Jesus, and he takes that moment, and that is then the point with which you have your strongest testimony of testifying that I was here, but God changed it to here. You know, that was something for me. Like, there have been things that I knew about God, but it wasn't until I walked through a season where I had to start questioning that about God, and then he answered it through providing in whatever way it was, that then I'm able to be like, no, I know this about God. And so God walks us through seasons of life, secret history with him, where he walks us through, and sometimes it's the experience that then is what it instills in your heart the knowledge, beyond just knowing it with your brain, but knowing it with your soul of, this is true of God. God is a provider. God is the one who sustains what he plans for. And God is the one who equips those he calls.
Amen.
Yeah.
One of the hardest seasons of my life, I remember God imprinting on my heart, in the absence of clarity, there is an invitation to intimacy with me. So in those moments when maybe you don't know what to do, when there's a lot of transition, when there's a lot of doubt and hardship, keep leaning into a relationship, because his word promises when we draw near to him, he too draws near to us.
Yeah.
Zach Bowsher, my friend, let me close this way. Where can our audience go to find out more about Thomas Road Young Adults, whether that be college or 20s and 30s, but also what's on the horizon? What can we expect from new music dropping soon?
Yes. Okay, so for Thomas Road Young Adults, you can look up TRYA on Instagram, Facebook. You can also go to trbc.org, and we're right up there with the ministries folder there. We'd love to have you if you're in the Lynchburg area, or if you're visiting the Lynchburg area, come on out. But then for new music, Rachel and I, we've been working on stuff. I've got a song called All I Want Is You that's coming out by the end of August.
Come on.
Rachel has one that I produced with her and one of our good friends, Hannah Cheshire, who she's down at Elevation. But we are going to be releasing called Glory that we're wrapping up on. But we got those two, and then we got another 6 that are coming out hopefully by the end of the year, which will be pretty sweet. So yeah, you can find us on social media. It's just Zach.Bowsher or Rachel.Bowsher. Also, same thing on Spotify, Rachel Bowsher and Zach Bowsher. So.
Dude, I cannot wait for the release of that music and those songs. And again, dude, just so grateful for you. I know if Evelyn were here, she would just say and echo how much you and Rachel have meant to her as well. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining me, my friend.
Thank you, man. Thank you.